Hello everybody, especially Alan, this video is for you. This is the Mighty Glue Stick and I'm coming at you with a creature of Fey. Yes, we're doing some Fey creatures and specifically we're doing the Dryad today. Now the Dryad stems back to Greek mythology where they originally associated exclusively with oak trees, and that tradition is also continued in the Forgotten Realms where Dryads are typically only associated with oak trees. Those are the trees that they are bonded with. However, in Greek mythology, other creatures, other dryads, they became associated with anybody who was bonded with a tree. But originally, those who were bonded with ash trees or walnuts or apples had different names. But we won't get into ancient mythology. We'll just talk about the Forgotten Realms and the 5th edition version of Dryads that we see. In the 5th edition, they aren't necessarily bonded strictly with oak trees. That leaves you open to interpret it as any sort of forest. So you could have Dryads which are bonded with giant mushrooms or colony trees and things like that. Or mythical trees, great big, giant trees of elven variety, whatever you come up with. In their forest home, they are bonded with the tree through a magical ritual, and this can take the form of that they willingly take on this life, or it could be an act of desperation to preserve them, or it could be a punishment for some transgression, and yeah, that's also largely up to you. In 5th edition, it sort of takes its call from the Forgotten Realms, and in that they are magically bound to a single tree, and the tree serves as Dryad's life force and its home, and they will fight to the death to protect that bonded tree. Also, Dryads in the official lore are always female, and so you could change it up a bit and assign a gender other than female to your Dryad, and that would be perfectly fine as far as I'm concerned. So whoever, if a drow or some other such decides to bond with a mushroom patch and protect an underdark home, that's perfectly fine variant. And if a male elf or Eladrin decides to bond with another tree up on the surface, that would be cool too. I don't see why not. All dryads are magically bound, so it's a mystical connection, and the dryad becomes a part of that tree. So they become made of tree stuff. So they appear to look like they are made out of tree material. So they have foliage for hair, and their skin is a soft bark, and their flesh is woody. They don't feel soft and pliant to the touch. At best, they would feel sapling-like, so they would be flexible and bendy and have a little bit of give to them, but otherwise be hard and cold. They're not warm-blooded anymore. Also, they gain all of their nutrients and such from the tree, and they can exist with photosynthesis. They can exist even if their tree gets killed and cut down. However, because their life force is bound magically to it, and their identity, that act drives them insane, and they become a thing of evil, or just vengeance that is very, very nasty to behold. So their abilities are, they've got an armor class of 11 or 16 with bark skin, which they can cast once per day. They have other innate magical abilities, so once per day they can also pass without trace, leaving no tracks across their woodland home, or summon a shillelagh to protect themselves as a melee weapon. However, they can pick up and use any clubbing, pick up a stick and use that as well. They 3 times a day can entangle opponents, and they can also cast Goodberry as a form of food, so they can provide sustenance to people. And at will, they can use Druidcraft as the druidic ability. They are allowed to speak with beasts and plants in as if they shared a language. So plants don't necessarily have to be able to speak or have a language themselves for the dryad to be able to communicate with them and get any information of who's passed by and things like that, as if they could see and feel and understand. They have tree stride, which allows them on their turn to travel 10 feet and then step into the tree and then bound 60 feet away, up to 60 feet away, to another tree and step out of that. and appear within 5 feet of the other tree as if they had just covered that intervening distance instantly. Both the trees must be big enough to contain the dryad's body, though, but typically they'll only be fairly small, so a large or a bigger tree is fine. They have 22 hit points, and they've got a speed of 30 feet. Their stats are pretty average. They've got a strength of 10, dex of 12, constitution of 11. Their intelligence is 14, their wisdom is 15, and they've got a charisma of 18. So these are special individuals in life. They are intelligent, wise, kind, and benevolent, and they are chosen to bond with a tree because the elves have great respect for a tree as well as a living entity. To them, a tree has as much right to live as anybody else, and they would probably get permission of the tree to bond a dryad to it. It's a mutual pact, after all. They don't impose this on a tree. The dryad has magical resistance, and it gets an advantage on saving throws against all spells and magical effects, which is pretty potent. But other than that, really, they don't have a lot of offensive ability, other than their ability to charm. So they can use Fey Charm on one target, or they can control up to 3 beasts in a round. And it's a DC 14 Wisdom saving throw, or the target is magically charmed. Has to be within 30 feet and in sight. And it's basically a charm effect. So the individual or beast will consider their dryad to be their best friend and do anything that to please them, really. But if their best friend starts doing real dick stuff to them, they will break out of the charm, and they'll be resistant to it or immune to the charm for the next 24 hours. And yeah, they'll probably learn to avoid such an effect because it leaves them wide open. They have a +4 to perception and a +5 to stealth. However, they can hide in a tree, so they're effectively invisible. Dark vision out to 60 feet and passive perception of 14. And they speak Elvish and Sylvan. They've got a challenge rating of 1. However, as they are able to charm up to 3 beasts, and there's no real restriction on what those beasts are, they could have all sorts of nasty, horrible creatures, dire bears and wolves, or blink dogs, or displacer beasts, or you name it, really. Any sort of large, fey, wild creature, dire badgers, cobras, that sort of thing. I'll leave it up to you. Even spiders, if they're in the Underdark. Yeah, spiders or hook horrors or cloakers, or yeah, even maybe a roper. That'd be fine. Ooh, a dryad bound with a roper, as if it was a tree. That's crazy. So yeah, they are bound to the tree, and they're reclusive. Typically, they won't go anywhere near anybody unless it's allies such as unicorns, treants, satyrs, and others that are basically fey creatures that have as much respect for the woods and the forest home as the dryad does. The dryad has a unique link to their tree, which allows them to live way past an elf's normal lifespan. Trees are capable of living for thousands of years. In fact, there's a kauri tree in the Coromandel which is about 2,000 years old. So you could imagine that a dryad would also be a repository of the history of an elven people, and perhaps even the last one remaining alive after an elven clan has been wiped out, to relive and relay the sad history of her former people. So there's certainly that, and if you get on the good side of an elf, they may give you access, or vouch for you, so you can get information from a dryad who would reclusively come out reluctantly and vouchsafe and tell you things that have happened thousands of years ago. However, the dryad will probably have stipulations such as the outsider would not be able to learn the location of her home tree. That would be secret. And if you're interacting with a dryad, it's probably not next to their home tree. They'll probably go to elaborate, create some sort of a ruse to make you believe that another tree is her home tree, to the point of almost extreme levels of deception, to make sure that if you threaten that tree, she would react as if your life was being threatened, when in actual fact her tree is located thousands of miles away. But she would have to travel back there very frequently in order to to bond back again with her home, which is, that has that link with her soul and her body. So yeah, they normally would stay very close to their tree when they're not trying to, convince others that it's not there. And that tree would normally be located a long way from any other sort of civilization, far out into the deep woods, or on the border of crossing into the Fey, or in fact on the Fey border that occasionally transports phases into the material realm, but otherwise is stationed in the Fey realm all the time. Or the tree, in fact, could be a portal to the Fey. It could have a sort of a split trunk with a hole in the middle being a portal to the Fey realm. That's quite possible. So yeah, they are neutral. They don't like to get involved. They have a very, very long view on things, and also they've got the unique perspective of having a tree's view on things. So they don't take kindly to things which disrupt the forest, and as far as they're concerned, nature is perfect the way it is, and it doesn't need anybody altering or improving it. They are, however, a victim of the former life as a mortal, and they do have emotions and feelings that are based on animal desires and things. So usually the story of how a dryad comes into contact with a mortal is through an attraction, through a member of the most pretty or inspiring adventurous hero who comes along and just happens to capture their attention. And of course, with a charisma of 18 and high wisdom and intelligence, dryads are captivating. They're fascinating. They're wondrous. They're mystical. They are exotic and very alluring. And they find mortals attractive also, because they were once mortals. As far as they're concerned, things are fine. And so you have the possibility of having a half dryad, and so they more closely resemble their paternal race rather than their mother's race, and by most standards they appear to be a child of normal birth. They look like mammals, but half the dryad's Fey heritage always shows in one obvious detail, such as green hair or moss-like hair, or wood-like fingernails, or the fact that their hair color changes with the seasons and their eyes glitter with chlorophyll, or the fact that they don't need to eat very frequently, or they can eat dirt, or that sort of thing, or they'd never eat meat or whatever. So typically they'd have blonde or brown or even red hair, and they'd be very close to nature and famous for their tremendous love and their lust for life, shall we say. So yeah, but they'd be a rare thing, and they wouldn't have a society per se, but if you wanted to create a template for a half dryad, that would be fine. Just give them a bonus to their charisma and wisdom score, and they'll be slow to grow, much like an elf, even more so, possibly living for 500 years, and they tend to embrace the laws of nature over the laws of people, so they are true neutral, and yeah, they can hide very well in the foliage and things. They just basically become one with it, and they tend to dress for the season. And by dress for the season, I mean they blend with the season. They become one with the forest. They look elvish in their outlook, or if they're maybe some other race, they would be Fey, definitely very Fey. So that's it for dryads. I hope that was satisfactory. Yeah, they're an interesting race for sure, but I wouldn't consider them to be a very hostile one unless you were doing things in the forest which you probably shouldn't have been doing in the first place. Thanks for listening, everybody. I'll be back with another video shortly.